Your host, Jake, and with me tonight, I have my guest, Vinny. Vinny, why don't you tell us a bit about yourself, dude?
Hey, what's up, world? It's me, Vinnie Langdon. I'm an actor, filmmaker, and probably I guess, best known as hosting a show called The Vinnie Langdon Show on 7 cable TV stations across the country for about almost 20 years. And then I said I want to retire early, and I guess that's kind of what I'm doing now. But yeah, good to be here.
Damn, man, 20 years. That's
I
like
know.
you
Yeah.
you definitely don't look old enough to have been hosting something like that for 20 years. That means you would have been like I would have been like 11 when you started.
Yeah, it was about
Jesus.
13, 14. I started. Originally, I wanted to be an actor, and when I started going to, auditions for TV shows and commercials and movies, they were like, "Well, what kind of experience do you have?" And I said, "Well, when I was like in first grade, I was in a play. I sang in school choir," and they were like, "Yeah, that doesn't count." And I said, "What do you mean that don't count? I sang in front of like 10 students, like that doesn't matter." So I realized and learned quickly that I had to get professional experience on the resume. So I went to a local public access TV station in my hometown of Vacaville, California, where I kind of grew up. And ironically, things happen, at the right time and when you least expect it. And they were looking for young up and coming talent to basically learn the ropes of television production. And once you learn, go out and make local content. So I took that as, well, maybe that could be my experience. That could be a stepping ground for me to get in there. Except I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 13, 14. And I think when we're all young, we kind of first want, the fame. And we see these celebrities walking on the red carpet and driving around Lamborghinis and Porsches. And you're like, yeah, I want that. 13 years old, don't even have a license. And you don't know what that lifestyle really is like. So for me, my sister and my mom used to book bands locally at an ice skating rink. And one of the bands that they worked with a lot was a band called Papa Roach, which was from same hometown as me. And I thought, they seem like they have fun interacting with these bands and working with them. And for me, maybe later I'll share my music interests or whatnot. But I was like, didn't know anything about the world of rock and roll and how crazy it was. Um, and I was a kid that grew up listening to whatever was on the radio. We used to listen to the radio, believe it or not, back in the day. We didn't listen to Spotify and have mixed genres. We would listen to one station. You want a rap station, you go to the next dial. You want hip hop, R&B, you want rock, you want pop, you go to different radio stations, right? And so I, grew up listening to, people like, now you're gonna laugh, Jake. All right, and so are your viewers, but it's okay. Leanne Rhymes, Britney Spears, Sheryl Crow, Shania Twain. Like that was the rock and roll for me, right? It's like, all right, I could get on with this Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. It's pretty rock and roll, right?
I
And
want it that way.
exactly, yeah. And so then I said, well, the TV station said, Vinny, well, you like acting, you like singing. What could you bring to the table? And I said, why don't I just go out and film bands? Little did I know you got to get permission, got to worry about copyright. When you're on a TV station, you got to worry about something called the FCC and laws. And so it was like not as easy as I thought, So I said, man, this is crazy. I guess I should just go out and try to sneak backstage and interview some of these bands. And I started interviewing, believe it or not, cover bands. There was, I don't know, Lionel Richie cover band, Rolling Stones cover bands, and it even though it's funny to look back now and say that's how I started, you had to start somewhere. And it was just like, hey, there was a band called the Cheese Balls, and I'm like, hey, I'm Vinny, I'm here with the Cheese Balls, and tell us about you. And they're like, we're a San Francisco party band, and I was like, oh, all right, that's cool. And I would put those interviews. Now, this is before YouTube. We're talking 2004, 2005. I would actually film on a VHS camcorder. That's how old I am, even though I don't look old. And I would have to convert it to a VHS tape, add titles and stuff like that. Like actually like draw on a piece of paper and put like the name of the band and like film that for 5 seconds and then put that in front of the video. And it was a lot of learning editing along the way. And I put my videos on the local TV station in my hometown, and I didn't think nothing of it. I was about to start high school, and I would walk around town. I'd, go run errands with my parents, and people would be like, "Hey, Vinny, what's up?" And I'm like, my parents would be like, "How do you know that person?" And I'm like, "I don't know." I'd be like construction workers, with the stop signs, and they turn the stop sign to like slow and let through traffic, and they'd be like, "Hey, Vinny," and I'm like, this is weird, like my parents would be like, who are these creeps, like how do they know you? I'm like, I don't know. And then it hit me, oh duh, I put my interviews on the TV station, and the demand turned around quick. All the local bands were hitting me up on a website called MySpace, and they're like, yo bro, I saw you interview this band, interview us. And I'm like, first of all, you're in front of a screen. You don't even know if these people are real or not. And again, remember, I'm only 13 years old, so these bands are in their 20s, and I'm like, okay, they could be creeps. You don't know. And what I didn't realize at the time until I started really diving into my show was how close knit the music industry is. I started interviewing local bands, and they'd be like, yo, bro, interview my cousin. He's the singer of this band. Oh, my girlfriend, she plays drums for this band. Go interview her. And then they'd break up or something like that. No. um, and so one interview led to another. And, to this day, I've done well over like 2,000 interviews. And I mean, if 20 years, so I don't even, I'm not doing the math, but let's just say I did 550 half-hour episodes in the course of like 15 years. And then in the last like 5 years of the show, I'm kind of not really doing it. I'm just kind of putting clips up on YouTube of old content, whatever I feel like doing these days. But it has been one ride for sure. And to circle back to the entertainment industry, it kind of did help because when I would go for auditions, it wasn't necessarily that I gained the experience of doing the show, but it definitely helped with the confidence because I would walk in and be like, oh yeah, I'm that Vinnie dude from that Vinnie Langdon show. And they'd be like, oh, okay, this guy must be somebody, and it landed me on roles on some TV shows and movies over the years. And so that's fun to look back. I mean, this September will be 20 years officially, and I do feel old, but it's kind of cool to look back and talk to you about it.
I can definitely feel that, man. It was kind of hard getting into the entertainment industry. I started off, kind of because I kind of had a sobering experience like you had with them being like, you need to do this first. Um, I had this friend, he's no longer with us, but he was really good friends with the metal band Soulfly, really good friends with the Cavaleras. And she was like, hey man, you need to hit this person up, and they're wanting to do, like photos and stuff of like their vegan meals and stuff because they do a lot of vegan cooking, and they're really, really big in the PR business, right? Like they handle bands like Lamb of God and stuff like that. So like they're up there, she's the queen bee. And so I messaged her. I was like, hey, I'd like to shoot this show. And she's like, who do you work for? I was like, nobody. Do you have any experience? Not really. And she's like, well, come back to me when you've had some experience. I was like, oh, okay. So fast forward 2 years, because I was like, I always felt like I wasn't good enough at this point, because I was just this punk photographer. And so I come back a few years later for Death Clock and Baby Metal. Yeah, it was one of my more recent things that I did. And I was like, I felt really proud. I was like, hey, I finally did it. And she responded to me. I was like, oh, I made it. I did something. And it was really at that moment though that I discovered that there are gatekeepers in the entertainment industry, and you have to get by them. And a lot of people have a lot of issues with those people who we term gatekeepers, but there's a reason as to why they're around. They don't want, shoddy product. They don't want the the artist or whoever you're working with to look shoddy or bad. So like I totally get that. Um, I've seen that you used to work for, was it Cumulus Media? Is that what your profile said? I want to say was it Cumulus Media? And
Yeah, yeah,
American Idol. I saw American Idol on your profile.
yeah. That was very both fun journeys. I remember it was thanks well when I first started my show, American Idol, of course, was huge at the time, and there was a couple artists from the show, kind of like what you're talking about. You know, you're like, oh my gosh, that person was on American Idol. I want to go interview them, and I went to go interview a specific artist, and they were coming to my town, which was rare. You know, it was like, you know, reality singing show star coming and performing a. I don't know why balloons are flying up. It's kind of good old Apple MacBook features. I don't know, but um, so one of the artists from American Idol was coming to my hometown. I wanted to do an interview, kind of like what you're talking about, a gatekeeper. I reached out to her management, said, "Hey, look." You know, she's going to be performing at a local auditorium. Can I sit down and interview her for 20 minutes before her show, for my TV show? And they said, sure. And I was like, awesome, great. Well, turns out this artist ended up getting sick and she couldn't make it. And I was so disappointed because, you know, sometimes what I also learned is some advice too is like, don't get too excited about what you're doing until it actually happens. Just like this interview, you're like, yo, I'm interviewing Vinnie, but then it's like, what if I was sick or what if I couldn't make it? Then you just disappointed. So I learned early on, don't, you know, don't let out anything. Well, I didn't know any better. So I'm telling all my friends, I'm, you know, on the previous episode, I'm like, hey, next week on my show, tune into my interview. I'm interviewing this American Idol contestant. And they were like, um, yeah, she's not going to do that show. And I'm like, but I just told everybody I was, you know, like this sucks. So the guy was like, hey, her management was like, hey, we'll keep your contact info. If she comes back around, you know, you'll be first on the list. I didn't think anything of it. I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'll move on to the next band. And other people, it wasn't like the end of the world. So, long story short, I remember it was like Thanksgiving one day, and it's Thanksgiving Day, okay? It's a holiday. We're about to eat. We're, you know, family gathering, and the house phone rings because back then I didn't have a cell phone. House phone rings, and then, you know, of course, you got the wire and the landline, so you're like stuck to the wall. Like you can't even have no privacy, right? So it's
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Everybody, grandma, grandpa, everybody's at the house. And I pick up the phone and I'm like, hey. And it's this mysterious voice on the phone and it's familiar. And all he says is, hey, I've been watching you on YouTube. And I'm like, that's creepy. Like, how'd you get my number? Who is this? And he ended up telling me that he was like, you know, a producer with American Idol and all this. And I was like, oh, yeah, okay, whatever. Heard that one before, you know, didn't think nothing of it. But he remembered me from wanting to do that interview, and he's saw the way I, you know, come across on YouTube and whatnot, and how I interview bands and how I was professional. Well, during that year, they were doing American Idol Christmas show, like a special, and it was not in Los Angeles. It was in Northern California near me. And he said, "Hey, would you like to come to the rehearsals?" And I said, "Sure." Came to the rehearsals and watched, and got to have dinner with some of the other American Idol contestants, and it was just really cool to like learn the secrets behind the show and get a little insight. And after that, I brought the cameras, and he goes, "Oh, you don't just interview bands, you film them too?" I said, "Yeah, I film it, I edit it, you know, I promote it, I kind of do a little bit of everything." And he's like, "Okay, well, tomorrow night you're filming American Idol. You're one of the camera guys." I said, um, "Great, sounds cool." And then after that experience, you know, a couple years down the road, I got a message, and it was like, hey, Vinny, you've met a lot of bands, you know, a lot of singers, you know, a lot of local unsigned artists. Do you know anyone that wants to be on American Idol? And I was like, yeah, this one girl, she's pretty good. I have a friend, he's got a voice like an angel, like, I don't know, why don't you hit them up? So then, they were like, great, you're a part of the casting. So anybody you think is good, send them our way and we'll try to get them on the show. And I'm like, okay. but it was just surreal because, it is such a big show and everything. So, but yeah, good, good time. So even though, I did a couple TV shows, I've done extra work, I've done, local commercials and whatnot. And I realized, the acting thing, like the older I got, it was just something like as a hobby. It was just like, hey, did a Super Bowl commercial with Beyonce and Guy Fieri. I was just an extra, but just to have that experience on the resume, and sure, the money was nice at the time, but it was just kind of like, this really isn't. You really get to know who you really are. When like the 13-year-old Vinnie was like, yeah, I want to be famous, sign autographs, live in a Hollywood mansion. And then like we get to like your late teens and then like early 20s and you're just like, eh. And then when you get to your 30s, you're like, hell no, that's not for me.
No, no,
I,
man, too
like
much fame.
I think I stopped using Twitter like almost 10 years ago, and I'm like, I'm so glad I did because it's just, yeah. And I feel
It's a
bad
shit
too.
show.
And
It's a shit show.
I felt bad too, like when like even when a friend texts you and then like if you don't text them within like a day, you feel bad. So it's like you have all these tweets and direct messages from people that you don't even know, but they think they know you. So they're just like they start telling you about their day, and you're like, this person in Arkansas, this person in Minnesota, and then you're like, man, I can't keep up with this. And I'm like, no, I'm done. Sorry, people that I ignored.
No, I definitely get that. There are times where you definitely need to take a step back just from social media in general because it becomes very overwhelming. Once you become a media personality or a face to something, I just actually had that experience this past weekend. There is an artist that I work with. She's up and coming in the Michigan, Indiana heavy metal scene, and she is a female deathcore vocalist, which is rare. I mean, I don't know if you have ever listened to deathcore, but it's the pig squeals and the gutturals and all that. And she sounds, I've nicknamed her the Goblin Queen, because she sounds scary, right? Well, I was working with her, and I walked into this event, and within like the first 3 minutes, I had like 6 different people yelling for me, and I'm like, I don't know who half of you are, but thank you. Like, it's nice to see you guys too. But after that night, I just really needed to just kind of decompress because it does become very, as I said, it's overwhelming after a minute because people act like they know you and you don't know them, but you want to try and be cordial and you want to be respectful because it's also your name on the line because you've become a public figure. So what you do is scrutinized and what you said is scrutinized. And so it at some point it's like you're walking on eggshells. Like I feel like I'm walking on eggshells sometimes. I don't consider myself popular or anything like that, but when you work with other individuals who are higher up on the food chain, what you say and do can affect them inadvertently. And I've noticed that over my time because I've worked with other people and they've said some really off the wall crap. Because not all metalheads are the most nice people. Not, people will people. Is really all I can say. People will people. And if you're associated with those people, then it can crap on your name. You know? So like I have a Twitter. I don't use it because Twitter has just become a giant, shit show. So I don't really use that. I have an Instagram. Don't really use it. Just, again, just drama and everything. And my Facebook is purely professional. As you've noticed, I don't post family things. It's music and entertainment industry related because I just don't want any of it, man. It becomes too much work after a minute to try and keep up on all the different social media platforms and whatnot. It's funny that you brought up MySpace because I am a MySpace kid. I actually posted a video earlier from a band that I realized is now over 17 years old. Hello, Goodbye.
Yeah.
I was like, oh man, 17 years ago? Because I looked at when it was published 17 years ago. I was like, dude,
right.
I can't be that old, can I? And then I look back, I'm like, man, I've been out of high school for 15 years.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Like, where did it go? And I've seen you on Warp Tour. You said you've worked with Papa Roach, which brings to mind I have a buddy who produced their first album, Invest.
Okay,
Um,
yeah, Dave.
it- yeah, Dave. You know
Yeah,
Dave. I
I know
love Dave.
that. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, he worked with a lot of other bands too that a lot of people
Hmm.
didn't know, and so yeah, he's Dave the Working Machine. Yeah, but no, yeah, and it's looking back to, I mean, yeah, we have Spotify, Amazon Music, I mean, and it's just like, I'm so glad, a lot of people, they're like, man, I wish I lived in the caveman era, or I wish I lived in, the 1950s when Elvis was around and Marilyn, Monroe and all this. And it's like, for me, I'm like, you know, I'm glad we lived in that MySpace era because it was just weird. And like, as soon as, like, don't get me wrong, Facebook had their thing, it was cool, but you couldn't browse for, local bands, and you couldn't just, do your schoolwork listening to MySpace music in the background. It's like MySpace, has its own genre, It's just like you start thinking of like Cute As What We Aim For and All Time Low and Pierce the Veil and, all those bands, or even like metal bands, Bullet for My Valentine, became popular off of that site too. And it's so funny if people go and they look back at my YouTube interviews from, 15, like you were saying, 15, 18 years ago now. At the end of the interview, I love it because I'd be like, hey, go check this band out at myspace.com/ Pierce Seville / Bring Me the Horizon, whoever. And it's just like, it's part of music history, in a way, and it's cool. Um, but yeah, no, those were good times. It was just like we were talking earlier. I mentioned how the music connection and music scene is all like close. Like you're saying, hey, Dave, you're over on that side of the country. I'm over here, and it's like we both know Dave. Like what a small world, right?
Hmm.
And that's just how it is. And yeah, Warp Tour, I mean, gosh, I seen a meme today, someone holding up a mirror going, I miss Warp Tour, and and just like MySpace and Warp Tour, they go hand in hand, where it brought people together no matter where they came from. I think everybody, whatever they felt, whatever they were going through, it was just like we all came together because of the music. And it was just so great for the bands to get that, promotion and recognition. And, you have a band from Arizona, but maybe they're playing in Florida, or maybe they're in Florida and they're playing up in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's like those bands wouldn't have had that opportunity if they weren't able to get on like a touring circuit like that. And it's just amazing how, like, looking back at it now, when you were in the moment, you were like, yeah, this is cool, I guess, and living in the moment. What I was doing was basically going backstage, interviewing the bands. I was shooting footage for certain artists that wanted me to, and, it's just, yeah, I mean, it was fun in the moment. And then now looking back, it's like, wow, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, now I feel old. Yeah,
Right. I
yeah.
I was I was going through Facebook and YouTube and stuff because that's the big thing now. Again, like you said, YouTube and Facebook wasn't big when we were younger, when we were teens. That wasn't the thing. It was MySpace. But I remember going. I went back through and like Warp Tour really did help solidify bands, like make them huge. Motionless in White, Avenged Sevenfold, bands like that. It just kind of helped blow them up. And it was in MySpace was really an integral part of music at that time because music was changing. It was going through a phase of evolution at that point because we were kind of getting out of like the new metal, grungy type, music stage into what it's kind of evolved into today, which was kind of cool. And you're right, like you don't really have ways to browse local bands anymore like we used to be able to because that's how everyone did it. Now you have SoundCloud, you have Spotify, you have YouTube, you have your we don't have Napster anymore. But we have what else is it? Pandora and all of that, like you have all these different places to look for music. Back in the day, man, we used to have to make like mix CDs and mixtapes. Like I remember people handing me, cassette tapes, from, listening to different radio stations, because that is where you heard everything. Radio seems to be dying because of all these other musical streaming platforms. Like and it's sad because that's how we used to do things is we would listen to our favorite songs. We'd call into the DJ and be like, hey man, I want to hear this song, like I want to hear Faint by Linkin Park, or something like that. And they'd be like, okay, let's do it, and you'd have to wait like 20 minutes, but you'd sit there glued to that radio
Right.
for
And
like
then they
20
wouldn't play
minutes.
the song, and then you'd be like,
Nope.
I'll try calling tomorrow, and the next day.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. But I mean
Yeah.
that was part of it because they could get you sucked in because you'd be thinking that they're gonna play that song, but instead they'd play like a whole bunch of other stuff. Like, if it weren't for the radio, I never would have found the band Hot Action Cop and their song Fever for the Flava from, I want to say that was like 2002 or something. I know it was an American Wedding, just weird stuff like that. Or I wouldn't have really found the Bloodhound Gang, who I absolutely adore. I wish they were still around. Just
Right.
crazy off the wall music that wouldn't get played today.
Right.
You know, a
Yeah.
lot of music wouldn't get played today. Same with movies and comics and TV shows and just media in general, because there has been such a change in society. Like
Right.
and PC stuff. I'm not getting into that because that's. But yeah, there's just been a change, and I don't really know how to put it. I mean, you are in more of an area that has more diversity in the entertainment industry than I am. I live up north in Michigan. You grew up in Cali, which is like the heart of the entertainment industry, dude. Like legit. Cali,
Yeah.
everybody goes to Cali.
Yeah. No, I mean it's amazing because I grew up an hour away from Sacramento, an hour from San Francisco. So, and it was cool because you know, it wasn't that I was glued to, oh, you're a Sacramento, you're part of the Sacramento scene, you're part of the San Francisco scene. And like you're talking about the mixed genres that we got to be introduced to through sites like MySpace and stuff. I mean, I remember like when the term emo first came out, and then it was emo slash screamo, and you're like, what's emo screamo? And then it was, punk, and then punk pop, and it's like punk music with pop vocals, and you're like, that don't sound good. And then you listen to it, and you're like, okay, I like the punk bass, da-na-na-na-na-na-na-na-na.
Hmm.
And then you got the, you got the pop vocals, and you're like, okay, that sounds kind of weird, but all right, kids like it, they're bobbing their head, music's music. But no, with like being in California, it was cool because so many people, I remember bands were like, all right, we're gonna play 100 local shows, and then we're moving to LA. And then I'd be like, that sucks. That band was really good. Now they went to LA, and now they can't even book a show because they're starting fresh. When they started making a following, and they would have 300-400 people at their shows, which was huge. And that's the sad thing I'm noticing across the country, not just New York or California or Texas. It's, I remember local bands actually, they well, number one, they did it because it was fun. Number two, it was a challenge, and it was part of their duty of being in a band was invite every friend they could, flyer up, post flyers when you're not even allowed to do it, go to venue bathrooms and post the flyers up, call your friends, post bulletins, make events on different websites, Eventbrite and whatever, MySpace, Facebook, YouTube, whatever you can. And now what I'm noticing is like when I've gone to shows lately, you see the local bands go on stage, and it's like their mom, their dad, their boyfriend, girlfriend. It's like 2, 3 people in the crowd, and they're like, they finish up a song, and you just hear, and it's like,
Yep.
where's all the people? And then the headline band comes on that's been around for 25, 30 years, and everyone just flocks to the stage. And it's like, people think just because they have a Facebook page, oh, people are going to come to my show. I'm going to sell tickets. And it's like, And I'm noticing that not just in certain states, like even in Michigan, I'm sure, in Iowa and all over, it's like nobody cares anymore. And I think the problem too is this. Oh, someone will live stream it on Facebook or someone will post it on YouTube or Instagram. I'll just watch the highlights tomorrow. Just like when, people watch the news, they do the same thing. Oh, I'll just watch it tomorrow. I'll DVR it if I want to find out anything. Nobody cares anymore, and that sucks. But I think we need to bring that back some way, somehow. Turn off social media, turn off the internet, knock on your next door neighbor's house, say, "Hey, I'm in a band. Come to my show, bro."
Yeah, man. It's because everything's become oversaturated. Bands are coming out left and right, and you made a very valid point that people are like, "Oh, it's because we have social media, so people are just gonna come." No, no. I remember when we would, slip out, like mixtapes, and stuff like our demos, and we'd slip them anywhere we could, or our flyers. We'd put them underneath people's, windshield wipers. We would throw them in the bathrooms or wherever. You go to your local skate park and you'd hit up all the skaters and BMXers and shit and be like, hey, we have this awesome, Rager coming up. You should come check it out. It's gonna be epic. Like that's how I discovered bands like Rancid and Flogging Molly back in the day, was hanging out at the skate park. Bands that I never would have thought about.
Playing Tony
You know,
Hawk Pro Skater and going, man, I
oh
like that band.
man. Yeah, yeah. Or Dave Mira. Dave Mira had some killer music in it too. That's actually how I discovered the song Paranoid, was because of Dave Mira, may he rest in peace. But like you don't have that anymore. And if you do, nobody really cares. As you said, nobody cares because there's so much out there. Like there's
Yeah.
just so much, and a lot of it is starting to sound the same. And the same thing's going with movies. Everything's starting to be remade because people are running out of ideas. We'll do something original. There's a band out there right now that has shown up at the Danny Wimmer festivals on the back of like a truck or a wagon. I think their name is Silly Goose or something like that. Just show up out in the parking lot, on the back of a trailer and start playing a show. Stuff
Yeah.
like that. We don't have that originality anymore. We don't have the people showing up in Denny's and throwing shows. We don't have the people showing up at a roller rink, and throwing a rager or something like that. And it's kind of disheartening because it seems like there's a lack of effort anymore. These venues get these bands and these bands like, oh, it's gonna be awesome. And then, as you said, they show up there and there's like maybe 5 people there for them, and they don't understand. Well, first off, it's up to you guys to promote your shows. It is your show. Your band is playing. You need to promote it. You can't rely on the venue to promote your stuff. It's a group effort. It's a team effort. Everyone must promote in order for it to be a successful show. And a lot of people don't do that anymore because they're stuck in their own world and their egos have become inflated and
Mhm.
they think their crap doesn't stink. And that's not the way it is, man. Everyone has started from the bottom, has had to grind. And you made a very valid point about how a lot of local bands will start to amass a fairly large following in their area, and then they'll take off and go somewhere else, and they will fall apart because they had these dreams of grandeur, and it's not feasible in some areas. I had a buddy who went from South Bend who, thought he was gonna be this big badass star when he moved to Cali, and when he got there, he was like, dude, I couldn't find shit. He was like, I was having to sleep wherever I could find a place to lay my head. I thought I was gonna make it big in the music scene, and it just, everywhere I turned, there were shows going on, and I was a nobody. There I was somebody. Now here I'm nobody. There are bands with 10,000, 15,000 people who know them, and I'm trying to go against them. And like, yeah, dude, that's the way it is. It's very cutthroat. The entertainment industry is very cutthroat.
Yeah, yeah. You gotta have the drive and the motivation. And I'll be honest, like somewhere along the line, it was like the reality hit for me. Maybe 13-year-old Vinny's like, yeah, I'm gonna be on Discovery, or I'm gonna be on Disney Channel, and I'm gonna do this and that, and then the reality kicks in, and you're just like, I mean, luckily, it's kind of like I dipped my toes in far enough to be like, well, do I even like this? Because a lot of people think, just like being in a band, it was like, oh my God, how cool. You're on stage, you're rocking out, you got people, rocking out with you. And then you do it, and then you're like, oh, I mean, yeah, that was fun when I was sitting there watching Korn in concert or Slipknot, being on the other side, but being on the stage and having all that pressure, people watching you, other fellow musicians going, "Oh, dude, he didn't drop down, drop D chord, it's like, oh, he messed up here, he hit his pedals here." Like, so much pressure, and not only that, but it's like, do you even get gratification like doing it and doing it for a long period of time? Like 20 years of doing my show, that's a long time. Because why? Because I love doing it. It was fun. Like, you wake up out of bed and it became my, daily routine was, what am I going to do for the Vinnie Langdon show today? I'm going to reach out to bands, or I'm going to do an interview like this, or I'm going to, travel and go find other bands to interview. But then sometimes people, especially like I recently had a friend who was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna move to California and I'm gonna be an actress," and I'm like, "Have you gone to acting school? Have you taken any acting classes? Have you done any short films? Have you worked on a bigger production?" No. Well, then are you gonna like it enough, especially when you're investing your whole lifestyle, not just you as an individual and your dream, but you're like financially. It's not easy to live in California anymore. Um, it's funny. I have like friends that were in bands that were like, Motley Crue. You know how they got discovered? I'm like, okay, you tell me. Well, they went to the Whiskey a Go Go in L.A. and they were backstage, and then they became famous. We're gonna do that. Well, you're not Motley Crue. They already did that. Another band one day came up to me and said, "We got it. Back in the 70s, there was this band, and they would go on stage, they'd paint their face white, and they'd stick their tongue out really big, and they'd play, and they became famous." All right, that was Kiss. And then it was, oh, we're going to do this because the Sex Pistols did it, or we're going to do this because, and then now we're hearing that, like a couple bands you mentioned, oh, we're gonna do this. We're gonna put like, gothic makeup on. We're gonna jump up on stage and, we'll have a synthesizer, a keyboard. Okay, Motionless in White did that 15, 17 years ago.
Hmm.
Like you're saying, you gotta be original. Same thing with filmmaking. It is very competitive. I've made 40 short films. I've made, attempts at making feature films, and, somewhere along the line, whether it was money or the actor decided to move, they didn't, complete, they didn't finish. And not only that, but you make a good product, just like musicians, they'll make a good song. Their mom, their dad, their family, their friends might like it. You go to a film festival, put your movie out there, and it's like, there's also 5,000 other people in the same line waiting for you. So you got to be original. You got to, you know, got to grow some balls and be like, yo, I'm proud of this, and just put it out there. I think that's the problem with me, because people will look on my YouTube channel and they'll notice some big artists. They'll be like, you're one of the first people to interview a guy named Jeffree Star. You're the first person to interview the Jonas Brothers when they first started, and they're like, "Bro, you only have 6,000 subscribers." Well, I wasn't like, "Hey, check me out. Make sure you subscribe. Hit that thumbs up button." Like, I didn't care. I'm like, I'm not saying that on my freaking YouTube channel. Like, if people like it, they'll like it. And you know what? I have another friend, and he is around the same age as me, and he's been doing it as long as I have. And he would always say to me, how come this person that interviews bands, they get like 10,000, 100,000 views? I'm like, but I rather have it more personal. Like, you
Hmm.
subscribe to my channel. Well, I know you. I know of you. So I can make my content more towards what Jake, we like baby metal. Well, let me go interview baby metal, and it'll be something that I know you're gonna come see. But if I had
Hmm.
hundreds and thousands of subscribers, I don't know what they want. I don't know what they like. I've been doing gaming videos. I just started Tomb Raider, and I'm like, oh, let me
Oh,
let me do remastered, right? It's really fun, and I didn't realize how hard the game was. I'm like,
oh my God.
dude, I
Yeah.
beat this when I was like 8 years old. How can I beat it as a 34-year-old? This is hard. It pisses you off. You jump the wrong way, but you find content. That's probably what if you look at the YouTube ranks and go, well, this YouTuber does a specific category of video. You look at Vinnie, he's posted videos of his German Shepherds. He's posting, video of him exercising, or there's a band interview, or there's Vinnie playing hockey. Like, this is random. So people are like, unsubscribe. I don't want to see Vinnie doing this, or I do want to see him. I'll resubscribe. But no, you just got to have that drive. You want to be a chef, you want to be an entrepreneur, a business, you want to be an actor, you want to move to Hollywood. Good, but you just have to know, you have to realize the reality before you get there. Like you were saying with your friend, they moved to California, like, oh, I'm going to get discovered. The days of being discovered are gone, right? Like, oh, I'm going to be like Justin Bieber and put videos up on YouTube and Usher's going to find me. No, maybe. It's like playing the lottery, might win $10 billion tomorrow, or maybe it never will happen in this lifetime. And you have to realize that. And the sooner you realize that, then you just go back to working on your craft, like you want to be an actor. Okay, maybe you think you're a really good actor and you don't need acting lessons. Then go get an agent, go get a manager, go find someone that's going to put you in those movies. You want to be a singer in a band? Start finding those auditions. Just do it, And I think, I don't want to get into the whole like COVID pandemic because it was years ago, but I think the one thing it taught all of us was how life could be short. And you just realize, like, at the end of the day, if tomorrow's our last day, what do we want to be known for? And what do we want to be what do we want to do with our life? At the end of the day, think about that tombstone when you're long gone. Is it going to say, Jane or John Doe was in a band? Or did he want to be in a band? Or did that person want to be a movie star? Or did they like not even try? So I think you just gotta, to wrap things up, I think, hey, just go out and do it. Whatever you want to do.
I agree with that 100%, man. All you can do is chase your dreams. Don't give up on them. It's gonna be hard. Right now, my YouTube page is just starting up. The music with Jake is just starting up. Do I expect to be famous overnight? No. Do I expect to be super famous a year from now? No. But I do know what I enjoy doing. And I know that I'm making content that others, who don't get the spotlight, will finally get some glow up, like the band managers, the stage managers, the tour managers, guitar techs, drum techs, all that stuff. Because I have noticed, I have more than a few friends who are techs in the music industry, and a lot of people watch their videos of them, setting things up, but they don't really realize what it takes to do all of that, or what it takes to put on a successful, stage show or movie or something like that. They don't understand, but some people are curious. And so I'm like, I'm friends with all these guys. I've had to do it. So why don't I shine some light on them and let them get their stories told? That's another thing people love. People love to hear stories about people who have been in the industry for a while. And I'm all for that. I'm all for that because everyone loves a good story. Everyone loves a good story because in a sense they can live vicariously through you and through that story.
Right,
And
right.
that I enjoy doing that. And yeah, I've known about you for a while. Me just being the unknown guy that I am. I was like, oh hey, this dude looks pretty cool. He seems to have a pretty decent resume, and he looks like he'd be someone that I could talk to. Your photos of your shepherds were one of the first things that caught my eye because I do have a shepherd.
Nice.
Who is the biggest idiot. I love her to death, but man, she is dumb. And that's the thing. She looks so scary, but she is the biggest fluffball. She is just a pansy, and I love it.
Right.
Dogs. Dogs. People love dogs, so that's something people can talk about. People love animals. People love music. People love movies. People love video games.
Right.
How the hell did we play Twisted Metal back in the 90s and we were badass at it, but now we play it 20, 30 years later and completely suck? But then we see 8-year-old kids who are playing Call of Duty, who are some of the best in the world, and we're just over here scratching our heads like, dude, we were around before this was even thought of.
Right.
We were playing old Nintendos. So like
Mhm.
we should be awesome because we grew up with. No, we
Yeah.
suck.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah, no, but yeah, no. German Shepherds are great. People always are like, oh, "That's cool," Like you were talking about the fame life, or the social media, or your reputation, right? And it's what is it called? Like catfishing. Like you have a specific persona out there in cyberland, but then a lot, because like you were talking about, a lot of people, they'll walk up to you, and the one thing they know, realize, and they learn quickly about me is that even though I'm an actor or a television personality, a filmmaker, they're like, "Oh, dude, you're like super shy." Like I thought, you're like, I don't know. It's like there's a switch, right? Like I'm in front of a
Mhm.
band and I turn it on and I'm like, "Hey, what's up? This is Vinnie Langdon. I'm here live with so and so," and then they meet the real me, who's like 20 notches more mellow, and they're like, "Bro, are you on something? You're just like so calm and chill." And you're like, "No, this is the real me. I'm just a, easygoing person." And no, it's just, yeah, it's just funny. But yeah, I don't know why I brought that up.
Oh no, dude, you're
But
good.
yeah,
That's the whole
but
thing about my show, man. I just want it to be laid back, just casual. I
right,
don't I
right.
don't want anything to be staged or scripted and nothing like that. It's just two people talking about what it's like to live life and do the things that they love and talk about how they got to where they are.
Yeah,
Nothing's ever easy. Those who think it's
yeah,
easy, they're in for a rude awakening.
right, yeah. And people are like, were there ever times where you were like, just done? Like 20 years is a long time to do anything. Some of the NFL players, or hockey players, they're not even in the league that long. So it's like, and of course there were times where, you know, I think I had like outsiders. They're like, you know, "Oh, you're gonna be famous one day. Like everyone's gonna know who Vinnie Langdon is." And I'm like, "Okay." And I'm sitting here waiting for that moment. Like, I don't know if that moment will ever even come, but all these people said I would. I have a friend, they text me and they're like, "Hey, superstar." And I'm like, "I'm a superstar? Like, I'm freaking Superman? I'm Batman? Like, what do you mean a superstar? I'm your friend Vinny. Like, I don't, okay." But, no, it's just, yeah, it's funny. So there's like definitely been times where I'm like, I'm in a chokehold and I'm ready to tap out because I'm just like, okay, I'm not making the money I thought I was going to be making. This band can't do an interview. Okay, I'm done. Or I think a lot of times it was, having the wrong friends at the wrong time. And I'm not talking about friends that were, into, different things. It was just having that support. You're talking about like, you support me, vice versa. And it's like, you think at the end of the day, you're like, "Oh, these are my bros, they're my friends." And then I'd call them up and be like, "Hey, um, going through this," or I have a show and do you want to come be my camera guy? And they were like, more concerned about who the band was versus me. And then like that would mess with me mentally, where I'm like, do I even have friends? Or you get to that low point a few times, or you're just like, yeah, people, like we were talking about, people that watch your content, a big percentage of them don't even know who you are. They just watch you because they enjoy you. But then at the end of the day, you're like, then why am I making content? Then I thought I was making content for my friends and family, and but you got to realize you got to do it for yourself at the end of the day. You might like singing, you might suck, or you might be in a band, you might be the worst band in your hometown. But if you're having fun and you're doing it, keep doing it. But just remember that reality too, though.
Yes, yes, that is one thing a lot of people forget is the reality and just how hard it is to get to where you are. And the more famous you get, the harder it is to actually keep genuine friends. That
Yeah.
that's hard. And you're right, when it comes to the toughest of times, that's when you really find out who your friends are. Like I was shooting a show in Chicago for the Dropkick Murphys, right? Middle of the winter, blizzard, just absolute crap. My vision isn't the best. I'm still a professional photographer, but my vision is not the best. And so I was like, hey dude, I can get you into this hotel and I have a ticket for you. if you want to ride with me and be my backup for this Dropkick Murphys show. He was like, yeah, man. Dude drove 4.5 hours to come, and it was the day of, which is the craziest thing because I was an hour and a half away from Chicago. So he drove 4.5 hours to my place, and then we drove an hour and a half back to Chicago on the same day, right? Just so we could do this show. And like I don't know what I would have done without that dude. Like that was one of those people I can say is a true friend, that he went and did that for me. And it's kind of surreal to think that you can know some people for 30 years and you can ask them to do something small like, hey man, you want to help me move a couch? Oh no man, I can't do that, blah 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 blah. Or just something stupid like that, like, oh hey man, I'm doing this, it's really really important, but somebody backed out, so I need some help. You want to help me? And like, nah, I'm too busy, blah blah blah. And then you look back and you're like, they were out partying instead. I'm like, really? I'm like, I would have helped you. You've seen me help you, but you can't help me with something small.
Yeah.
So it's as time goes on, it's been weird. At this show I was just at, I had a falling out with a band back in the day that I was a part of, and I walked up to the old vocalist at this show, and I was like, "Hey, man, what happened a few years ago is, you know, it's dead, it's done. I just kind of want to bury the hatchet and just, let bygones be bygones, man. There's no room for, division in the musical scene. I'd rather unify everybody and have everybody be on the same page and just be friendly with each other and help each other out rather than be divisive and backstabby and just cruel, and I understand I can do that in the scene in which I'm involved because it's smaller, it's not very large, and everybody kind of knows everybody, so we're not really vying for each other's spots because we've already kind of solidified ourselves in our own little areas. So that's been kind of cool. But I've noticed, like, I go to Chicago, I go to shows at like Reggie's and stuff like that, and the larger the area, the more cutthroat I've noticed it is. It's a lot more cutthroat because there's a lot more saturation, and whatnot. And it's sometimes, man, it can just be heartbreaking. At times it can be heartbreaking because like you see these kids who this is all they've ever dreamed of doing. This is all they've ever wanted to do, and they just get destroyed because they aren't getting anywhere fast. They think that they're just gonna jump right off, and it's not happening the way that they wanted it to. But they keep putting money into it, and they're just not receiving anything back from it. So they become heartbroken, and you'll lose some really really cool people over that, and it's because they're just not given the opportunity, or there's members who just aren't really helping them. Wow, I just went on a total ADHD tangent there. My bad. Wow,
It's all
I
good,
went
man.
just total left field. My bad. My bad. I just totally, yeah. That's me.
Well, it happens, man.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
what a what is one of the funniest stories you have from just working with all these individuals? Because I know with all the interviews you've done, I know there's things that have been edited out, and I'm curious as to some of the funny shenanigans that have gone on, that
Um,
you've experienced.
yeah, I'm trying to think like on the top of my head. As far as funny, who was it? Not of Mice and Men. The singer was Jerry Rouse. She was, oh gosh, not Attack Attack. I'm going back. Anyways, I was doing an interview, and thank God a lot of the interviews weren't live. There were a few episodes I did where they were completely live. But Josh from A Day to Remember gets out of the shower and he's just walking in his underwear, like his little white, briefs, and just like walking past the, like during the interview. And of course, the other band's like, we're on tour with the Day to Remember, can't you tell? Because they're, so it's like things like that. Um, there, the thing, like, what I like about your show, I'll compliment you on here, is that it's totally improvised, which, I applaud if people can do that. Some they can't, and that's okay. But my show was, when I first started, yeah, I would have the cheat sheet because I didn't know what I was doing. I never did this before. But then by the fourth or fifth episode, I was like, I'm just doing an improv style because a couple times, this has happened a few times where, the type of artists that I was interviewing, they were, you want to call them the emerging bands. They were up and coming, like, say, the Jonas Brothers. They did a video on my show, and then, like, 2, 3 days later, they were flying back to New York to do MTV TRL. So I knew these bands were, like, gonna be the next big thing. Another band was like Paramore, Hayley Williams, interviewing her, and couple years later, they do the Twilight movie soundtrack, and then boom, they're internationally known. Um, and so there was a few incidents where I would, I'd be like, oh, back in the day on Fuse, there was Steven's Untitled Rock Show, which was huge for us little kids at the time. And
Mm-hmm.
I would see like The Used, or I'd see, My Chemical Romance, and I just start like picking up how they would do their interviews, keep it short, keep it precise, get to the point. And I was like, okay, so and the reason I did that, the improvised thing, was because this is what usually would happen. I would see them on MTV or VH1 or Fuse, and I'd get all excited. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to interview them. They're so cool. And then I'd show up. And then, like, 10 minutes before I do the interview, they're walking on their flip cell phones and they're like pissed off. Like their girlfriend cheated on them, or their wife is leaving them and they're in the middle of the tour in the middle of the country. And then I'm like supposed to do an interview with them about, oh, Happy Things, their new record and their new music video that's gonna drop. And I'm like, hey, I'm here with this band, and they're just like,
Fuck you.
exactly, pretty much. And I'd be like, so tell us about this. And then they'd be like, yep, uh-huh, right. And then it makes me, the interviewer, look stupid. And then you see all those comments on YouTube like, these guys, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, you weren't there, I mean, it's hilarious the type of things that, we experience backstage. There's certain artists, I won't, name them or anything, but sometimes I'd see them like get so much recognition, and I'm like sitting there going, yeah, they're a good musician, but are they a good person? Not from what I observed and was around and seen and heard from, through the grapevine of the music world. And it just, it would just blow my mind. I'd sit there and, there would be some interviews I would do, and I'm like, man, can I just be like honest and be like, dude, this guy's a douchebag. Like, why'd I even, like, I'd drive home from the concert and I'd be like, I'm not uploading this video on YouTube. Like, this dude he's such a jerk, or man, he was just an a-hole, man. Like, how, and a lot of times it wasn't even the bands. It could have been their tour management or their roadies or their security or whoever. I will drop a name here because I think it's funny. I went into a show, I think it was like in Davis, California, and Sacramento. There was like 2 incidents. And, I'm there supposed to be filming like one of the headlining bands, right? I think it was Medina Lake, I think, at the time, and they were a band from Chicago, great band.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at the venue and I'm like, all right, cool. Got my camera because, I would be, a television broadcast camera. Like it wasn't like a little Nikon or anything
Right.
like that. And so I'm there and I'm just holding my camera. And all of a sudden, I'm just standing there, the camera's off. And this band goes up on stage and they're doing their set before Medina Lake comes on. And this security guy grabs me around the neck and he says, no cameras, get the F out of here. And I'm like press pass. Like, I have the right to be here, dude. What are you doing? And he's like, Jared Leto said no filming of his show at all. And I was like I couldn't even explain myself. Like, I'm here to film the headlining band, not 30 Seconds to Mars. And like, for a period, I was like, dude, I hate 30 Seconds to Mars. Like, I love that song, The Kill, but I'm like, come on,
Hmm.
man. Like, really? Like, you kicked me out of a 30 Seconds to Mars show. You didn't even know what the thing was. And then Medina Lake comes and they're like, hey, so did you get any good footage of us for our record label? And I'm like, no, man, they threw me out. I wasn't even allowed to film you guys. And they're like, what? So, I mean, there's, stories like that. I mean, there's so many of them where, majority of the times the bands were really cool. They were down to earth. They're, as you see them on, on the internet, you're like, oh, dude, like Bert from The Used. Like, I was a huge fan of The Used, and a lot of times I wouldn't get starstruck. But if you go back and look up my interview with The Used, like, you could tell a few times, like, I froze. I'm like, because I'm just sitting there, like, in disbelief, like, holy shit. He's smoking a cigarette sitting next to me. Like, this is Bert McCracken from The Used. Like, I listened to his music this morning and yesterday and the day before, and I'm sitting next to the dude. And a lot of times people, they would see how professional I was, and they'd be like, dude, if I were you, I'd be shaking. I'd be so nervous. I wouldn't know what to ask the bands. How do you do it? And I guess the secret is just you treat everyone like they're your best friend, even if you never will see that. Like, there's bands I never even talked to since I interviewed them, or there's bands that, I still stay in touch with. But you always treat that person you're interviewing as your best friend. A lot of times people will be like, damn, you're friends with all these bands. And I'm like, dude, I wish I was friends with these guys because, like, they don't know anything about me and I don't know anything about them. But it's the acting skills, And, there's another fun story I'll tell you is people say, well, what was your favorite interview? Well, I was a big WWE wrestling fan when I was a kid. Used to play all the video games, SmackDown here and all that. And one of the theme songs for one of the wrestlers was by a band called Power Man 5000. And, I was like 5 years old when I first listened to them. And I'm like, yeah, rock and roll, man. This is cool. And I get an email one day and they say, Power Man 5000's coming to the area. Would you like to interview them? They send me like a press release that no other band ever did this before, but it was like a booklet. It was like 50 pages. It's like Power Man 5000 on MTV, Power Man 5000 on tour with Rob Zombie, Power Man 5000 did this. They put out 6 albums. They did this. And I'm just like, this is cool. So then I show up and I think I was like only 15 years old. And it was like probably like the first like big band I got to interview. And I walk in and I'm just like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And I do the interview, and of course I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my God, don't screw up, Vinny, don't screw up. And at the end of the interview, he looks at me and he takes his sunglasses off, and the singer Spider, he's like, that was a kick-ass interview, bro. And I'm like, wow, like, yeah, I did it. So then next time Power Man 5000 is in the area, I get a phone call and they're like, do you have a camera? And I'm like, well, of course. And they're like, um, good, show up. You can interview the band, you can film them, do whatever you want. You have all access to the band as long as you do a commercial for MTV for us that needs to be basically filmed, and then it had to be like FedEx overnight to like a production company in Los Angeles. And I'm just like, holy shit. Like a 5-year-old Vinny is just going, the wrestling gods of music, Power Man 5000. I'm like, this is crazy. And then it was like, I think it aired on MTV, Fuse, VH1. Like, it was, they were, when I got to film it, I was like, this is so cool. And they were like, we're Power Man 5000. Go get our new album now. And I'm just like, being able to do these side projects for the bands was so because a lot of times, like I said earlier, there were times where I was about to throw in the towel, like, why am I doing this? This isn't even worth it. But moments like that, like, made it worth it. and then just becoming friends with some of these bands too, where some of them I can go through my phone and I know that if I texted them and said, there's a couple of bands, like, it's funny, we'll like even send Christmas cards to each other, and I'm like, dude, people would be like crapping their pants if like they get a little envelope with a stamp on it. It's from like a band they listened to on during the MySpace days. Um, we were in the COVID pandemic, and I got a call from the dudes in Escape the Fate, and they said, "Hey, bro, we need you to do a music video for us for our Christmas song." And I'm just like, another like Power Man 5000 moment where it's like, wow, like this is a band, I listen to and am a fan of, and consider them friends, and hey, this is pretty cool. And at the end of the day, you're like, I guess this is why I do it, you know, to help our friends, to help those in need. A lot of people say, hey, I have a few friends that watched my show earlier in the days, and they're like, bro, you know how many bands you helped? And I'm like, well, like, you don't think of it like that, but you did a tiny fraction, a part. I did do that interview with the Jonas Brothers, or I did interview this band or that band, or I told them about your podcast, or I told them about a venue, or I told them about a photographer or a radio show they could be on. And it's all about helping each other, no matter where you come from. So, you know, good times.
That is definitely key, man. Helping everyone else out, because eventually that will come back to help you. I don't really know any famous people. I know a lot of big name photographers, and stuff, because that's where I got my start. And I've told this story before on one of my other podcasts, about how I did my first professional photo shoot, of a show. It was Ginger, Suicide Silence, All Hail the Yeti. And I have to give a shout out to Brad Hardy of Minus Head, for hooking me up with that one, because I was supposed to be photographing All Hail Yeti. Unfortunately, they came down with COVID. Now, mind you, I was just this punk kid. I was still in college for photography, and so like this was for my portfolio, for school. And so they came down with COVID. And I was like, oh crap, now I'm not gonna be able to do it. He's like, oh no, man, you're good. You'll still be okay. You can shoot the rest of the band. So like, okay. Well, as you know, because you've been in the photo pit, 3 songs. I didn't know the 3 songs. I didn't know the 3 songs. And so I'm walking around up there, it's Suicide Silence. 3 songs goes by, I'm up there for like an extra, like maybe song and a half. And I see their TM. Well, I didn't know that she was their TM. I just saw some, woman up there with bright pink hair who looked badass. So I just kind of saunter up to her, she's up there filming with her phone. I'm like, hey man, what's up? How you doing? And she looks at me, she's like, bro, what the fuck are you doing? It's like, well, I press, I'm like, I can be here. She's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, bro, like, you need to get the fuck out of here. I was like, but I'm pressed. She's like, no, you need to get the fuck out. I was like, okay. So like, I was like freaking the fuck out. I was like, oh no, am I getting booted? What am I doing? So like, I try and scurry away and to like this like VIP section, which I didn't know was VIP at the time, but I was trying to get out. Like, I was trying to get away from this woman as fast as I could, because I was totally intimidated. And so I
Should have
finally
took the
get
hot
out.
pink hair, man.
Oh, dude, she's awesome. Like, she tours with some of the biggest bands. She just got done. I know she was touring with the Black Crowes a while ago. She did like a world tour with them. She's toured with Suicide Silence a few times. Like, she's really big in the industry. So I'm not gonna name drop her, but if she sees this, you know who you are. And thank you, because you opened my eyes to what it's really like to be there. Now later on, I found out it was a security precaution. First off, because a few nights prior, I guess someone had broken into the artist dressing room and had to be tackled. So like, it was, I understood. And that same night that I was there, someone else used their press badge to run backstage, and they weren't supposed to be backstage. So like, it was a whole to do and everything. But where was I? Oh yeah. So like, she showed me what was for, and I went to security. And this is also where I learned to befriend security right away. Security is your best friend in heavy metal shows, because without them, you can have your ass handed to you by a crowd surfer or something. So always befriend security. So I went up to them. I was like, "Did you know about the 3?" And they're like, we weren't told this. I was like, I wasn't told this. I didn't know this. It wasn't in my release. I guess it was the unwritten rule. But yeah, I became really good friends with the security after that and whatnot, and learned that if you talk to security first and just kind of introduce yourself, befriend them, warm up to them, have them warm up to you, you can. I don't know if I should say it, but I'm going to say it anyways because, as I said, this is unfiltered and raw. I just kind of, you know, I get away with a few more things. I guess they're a bit more lax on things if they know you and you know them. Um, but yeah, it definitely want to befriend security so that way you don't have the incident that you had. I've
Oh, yeah.
definitely learned that one because I'll walk up to him before the show even starts. I'm like, all right, man. So what do I need to know? Like, who was it? It was fuck, it's Jason Richardson. It was Jason Richardson, Death Clock, and Baby Metal. So I was told that I could photograph the whole show. And so I was walking through, I had my camera up. I was like, all right, photographer coming through. And I got up near, where the photo pit is supposed to be. And security was like, hey man, no, you can't do photographs. I'm like, but I was told I could photograph the whole show. Well, Jason doesn't want anyone to do photographs of him tonight. I'm like, that's fair. That's fair. So I go back, I talk to, everyone who's running, media and all that. And I get told that because I was there to shoot for Death Clock and Baby Metal primarily, but I was really excited for Baby Metal. Like, it's Baby Metal, man. Like, they're awesome. They get a lot of hate, but I love them. They're like, oh yeah, you'll get between 5 and 8 songs, but you cannot use phones. You cannot use your camera anywhere outside of those songs, like at all. Once you're done photographing them, your camera goes in the back room. Like, we take it. I'm like, well, that's fair. So I didn't know because they weren't very specific on that either. Even in their release that we had to sign, we couldn't use our phones to take videos of the crowd from the pit. I didn't know that. Thankfully their TM was really cool with that and whatnot. And just kind of sauntered. I was like, hey man, you can't be doing that. I was like, I'm sorry, dude. Like, I didn't know that. That's one of my favorite things is photographing the crowd, catching their reactions to shows. Because maybe somewhere down the line, 20 years from now, whatever, they can look back and they can find a photo of themselves or a video of themselves, and it just brings back that whole experience again. Or they can share it with their kids or what have you. So like that's a big reason as to why I do it. I didn't know that I couldn't do that. So, but if I had been a total prick to security, I'm sure they would have yelled at me and probably would have been like, all right, dude, you're out of here. Said in the release that you can't do this, but they were just like, hey man, just don't post it. You can delete it or something. Just don't post it. I was like, that's fine. Whatever. So definitely respect security because they will save your ass or they'll kick
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Now there's been tons of shows where, I mean, and I'm 6 foot tall, but I wasn't always 6 foot tall. And when
Damn,
I
I feel
was,
like a midget. I'm like
yeah.
5'1", 5'2".
So sometimes when you're in the photo pit, you're like, man, I feel like I'm in the way of people. Like, it's awkward. But, I wasn't always a, big guy. And, it was, it's funny because I used to take my parents to shows because, didn't drive. And it was like, okay, mom, like waving to her. Like, I'm safe. I'm in the photo pit. And like, way in the back
Mm-hmm.
of the venue. And my mom would be like, "Oh my God, this band, they mosh pit, they do the circle pits, they do the wall to wall. Like, just be careful." And I'd get up there, because I like my backstory. I had open heart surgery too, so it's like imagine just like one good
Oh,
hit,
yep.
I'm a goner. So, so yeah, security, you're just always like, you're doing the right thing, checking in with them, like, hey, I'm here, I'm with this publication, I'm shooting for, the band, or I'm with the band, or I'm with my own entity, whatever. And there's been a lot of times where, the bands would be like, oh, you got a crowd surfer behind you, and a lot of times Like it's funny, I'm blind in one eye too, in my left eye. So like you're shooting bands, and
Hmm.
you have no peripherals of what's behind you. So many times you get kicked in the back of the head with a Converse or a Vans shoe, and you're like, damn it, I was gonna be a
Hmm.
good pitcher. But yeah, security, they can always help you out. Not all security are like, just because they're security, they got that written across their shirt. They think, they're the ultimate badass, and you realize not all the time. And but some every once in a while you meet like you're like, dude, I want to be friends with that guy. He's really cool. Just because he's got the muscles and he's built, he's cool, But yeah, good times. Um, yeah, no, it's yeah, 20 years, quite a journey. People always like this story. I don't know why, but I'll share it with you and your viewers. I was out on the Warp Tour in 2000, I think it was 8 that year, and I'm sure you kind of you've experienced this already in your career. Is sometimes you'll be backstage and everybody kind of blends in. You don't know if they're catering. You don't know if they're with the venue. You don't know if they're an assistant, a tour manager, a roadie, a tech, maybe just a girlfriend or a
Hmm.
boyfriend to the band. You don't know. So this girl walks up to me, and she knew who I was because she heard my name on the tour. Like, hey, Vinnie does interviews with bands. Go talk to Vinnie. He'll hook you up with an interview. And this girl walks up. I'll never forget what she was wearing. She's wearing this like flower dress. I know it sounds like it's going into a romantic direction, but sadly it's not. So this girl walks up. She shakes my hand, and she's kind of has this like her attitude was just like, she got sunglasses on because you can't really tell if she's like, bluffing or not. And she just like got her hand on her hip, and she's like, hey, Shay, you should interview me. I'm like, girl, I'm here to work. I'm not here to flirt. I'm not here like this isn't happening right now. Like just don't mess with me. I have a long list. I have to interview like 20 bands today. Like I don't have time for people just to be, whatever. And she's like, "Oh, okay. Well, you should really interview me, Vinny." And I'm like, "Yeah, okay. Everybody says that, like, yeah, okay. Good pickup line, but it's not working for Vinny, okay?" But it was nice meeting you. Have a great day. And I have to go interview a band called Gym Class Heroes, who's, now I didn't say like who's in a real band, or I didn't say that because I still didn't know who this person was. So I'm just like, well, have a nice day. Nice meeting you. Good luck to whatever the heck you do, whether you're a filmmaker, a chef, a tour manager. I don't know what you do, but have a good best wishes, right?
Right.
So then, I don't know. Then I come home and go grocery shopping, or I go shopping somewhere, and I hear a song on the radio, and it's like just like really cheesy song, and I'm like it was like hot and cold, and I'm like, okay, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're cold, you're cold. Okay, and they're like, that was Katy Perry with "Hot and Cold," number one on the Billboard charts. And I'm just like what a weird song. Like what type of person sings this song? So I go on Google, back in the day, and I'm like, who sings "Hot and Cold?" And all these pictures of this girl named Katy Perry pop up, and I'm like, that's the girl who wanted me to interview her. And then, people are like, bro, you're an idiot. Katy Perry wanted you to interview her and you told her no? And I'm like, yeah, I told her no. Because at the time, I had no idea who she was. And yeah, good times.
Been there. I made a lot of those mistakes actually. When I, as you've seen, I do manage bands as well. I'm, I'm all over the place. But it was at one of the Danny Wimmer festivals. It was Louder Than Life, 2 years ago. I was backstage with I actually worked with two bands that year that went backstage for interviews and stuff, which I met a lot of really cool people. I'll shout one out, Dean Pipeman of Pipeman Radio. You're awesome. Thank you, dude. He interviewed one of my bands, and Lars Ulrich's wife also interviewed one of the bands that I work with. Um, but like I didn't really know who she was. at this point, like I didn't know that she was a model and just, just knew that she was interviewing people. Well, she really liked my hat. And it was from a band that I used to manage by the name of Mag Dylan. And it said, fuck it. And she, earlier during the interview was like, I really need to get one of those hats. And the band was like, oh, we'll get one to you. And I came back the next day with another band that I worked with. And I saw her and I just kind of sauntered up. I was like, hey, man, thanks so much for interviewing the band yesterday. I'm sorry the management company I'm with right now kind of screwed the pooch. We were expecting to be interviewed, by you today with this band. Unfortunately, I know it's not going to happen today. If there's any time, that might be free that you could work it in, that'd be cool. If not, hey, it is what it is. And I was like, but I remember you saying that you liked the hats. Well, you can have mine. And she's like, are you serious? I was like, yeah. Like I didn't think anything of it. And it was after all this was said and done, I found out that that was Lars Ulrich of Metallica. It was his wife. I'm like, oh shit.
That's funny.
Wow. And I'm really glad that I wasn't like, completely starstruck. Um, just because, I mean, being backstage at a festival of that magnitude, everyone that you see, you're running into people like Flea or Jelly Roll or Corey Taylor, who is surprisingly short but has a freakishly huge bodyguard. Like, I mean, huge. This dude's like 6'5", and Corey's like 5'6", 5'8", something like that. Like, this dude's huge. I tried to walk up to him and do like, he's in the middle of an interview. I was like, okay, whatever. But you just kind of see everyone walk around in plain clothes, t-shirts, whatnot. The only person I saw that actually had like preferential treatment, but I understand because she's very theatrical. Maria Brink of In This Moment was like the only one that I saw have like preferential treatment. She was like driven there and back in a van and all that, like, because look at what her wardrobe alone is just nuts. If you've ever seen them live, you get what I mean. There's a lot of costume changes, so I got that. But at the end of the day, man, I met some really, really cool people doing that festival, and it was just, they're the same as us, or most of them are very much the same as us. Like I met a LJ of Seven Dust, super chill dude. He knows one of my best friends, Barbecue Bob. He used to live in Mesa. He used to work at the Marquee and did barbecue for all the bands. And I walked up. I was wearing my Blacktooth barbecue shirt, and I was like, "Hey man, you know my Uncle Bob?" And he was like, "Who?" And he looked at the shirt. He's like, "Oh, Barbecue Bob, Barbecue Bob. I love that guy. He's super cool." I was like, "Hey man, do you care if I get a photo?" He's like, "Yeah, brother, come in." He just like wrapped his arm around me, and I got a photo. And I was like, "Dude, that was like kind of surreal and really cool." Another dude who did that was a Youngblood. You know, that was just something totally out of the blue. I was there getting a beer. He was getting a beer, and I just kind of turned around and just kind of looked at him. I was like, "Do you mind if I snag a photo with you and just like talk for a minute?" Super chill guy, super chill, and it's just kind of funny how all of that just kind of played out, because you're right. As a kid, you don't expect to really meet like your idols or people that you grew up listening to. And then when you actually get the opportunity, you don't know whether to be starstruck or just try and be like cool with it. So you're kind of like going through the motions and just trying to stay calm, but on the inside you're like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like you were talking about the Used, and that I used to manage actually played Krakenfest in Florida with the Used, and stuff like that. It's just it's just kind of a weird, surreal thing to be doing, I guess, what I do now, because I grew up in Iowa. Like I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Music doesn't really exist in Iowa. You have Woolies in Des Moines, and we used to have the U.S. Cellular Center in Cedar Rapids. That doesn't exist anymore. It's something else now. But that's where I first saw Lincoln Park back in 2003, 2003. Yeah, something like that. So to come kind of full circle to hanging out with these people, it's cool, but I definitely am trying to use my platform to rip away the veil that people tend to have of these people. They look at them as larger than life, and so then when they actually meet them, they like freak out. I'm like, that gets a little tiring after a minute. Like, we appreciate it. the bands appreciate it. Like, don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, they'd like to just kind of relax, have a beer, have a soda, whatever, chill.
Capri Sun, whatever they're into. Yeah.
Oh, dude, Capri Suns. Oh, that takes me back to the '90s commercials. They drink it all and they like disrespect it and they like flatten.
Yeah.
Oh man, that reminds me of the old weed commercials. This is what happens if you do one hit of weed.
You
Oh,
crush like a Capri Sun.
dude, the '90s and early 2000s were a wild place, just
Yeah.
in general for everything.
I know. Lately on YouTube, I've been like, seeing like recommended videos, and it's like things that were in the 90s that aren't here today. And I'm like, man,
Tamagotchi.
yeah, right. And I'm like, man, and like everyone had the Pog cards, but they didn't know what to do with the Pogs. Like you collect them, you flip them. What do you do with them? You just had them. Your sister had trolls. You played with their hair, and you toss them.
Yep.
Good times.
Oh,
But
the Furbies. The
but
Furbies, dude. Did you
oh
ever have
yeah,
one of those? They just speak
I
to you in
don't
the middle
think
of the
I
night.
did.
Oh,
Yeah,
my sisters
I
had them.
mean, yeah,
It
good
terrified me.
times. Yeah,
The
yeah,
'90s were good times.
they were.
A lot of people, Backstreet Boys. You were talking about like Backstreet Boys and stuff like. Dude, okay, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna lie. Before every podcast, I'm listening to NSYNC, Backstreet Boys, Nelly. And I'm this guy that works with deathcore bands, like primarily, like beat
Yeah.
down, slam in your face stuff. So then I'm listening to I Want It That Way,
Great. Yeah.
and stuff like that. The
Yeah.
other night, me and my vocalist, we were chilling out in her car and just kind of mentally trying to prepare for this sold out show, the band's first ever sold out show. And we decided to sing the Pokemon theme song, the original Pokemon theme song, just to get us in our headset. So we were singing Pokemon and we were listening to the ocean cut of Dragon Ball Z, so rock the dragon, dragon, rock the dragon, Dragon Ball Z. We were just out there singing that, and everyone inside is like, we're just having a good time about it, man.
Right.
Yeah, that was a very exploratory time for music. So much happened in the '90s that really changed the face of music and created what it is today. We had like what, 3 or 4 different like genres, start up in the '90s alone. You went from hair metal to grunge metal to alternative, rock to your new metal and so on and so forth. The boy bands,
Right. Yeah.
that stuff. And it's sad that they are not around anymore. Well, they are, but they're not. I'm really glad that NSYNC is back. Yes, I am not gonna lie. I love NSYNC. I'm glad that Creed is doing their tour. I'm glad that they're back together. I love those guys. Um, Super cool. I've seen Scott Stapp by himself. I've seen Mark Tremonti by himself with his band, and I've seen him with Alter Bridge. So to see all these bands coming back together is really, really cool because it's nostalgic. You have the what was it? Who sings the song closing? Semisonic. Semisonic was just touring. So yeah, I'd like Closing Time, or then I grew up with like Third Eye Blind, which is still a staple in my stuff. But you listen to some of the lyrics of some of their songs now, and you're just like, those are like bopping, those are like super popular hits on like,
Right.
all the major stations, and then you hear that they're singing about, like doing drugs. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, like you gotta take a hit, and then you gotta take another hit, and then a bump for a bump, and I'm like, oh,
Yeah. Well, it's
this was
like just
popular.
same thing with like, I mean, Usher playing at the Super Bowl. And I'm like, dude, I remember being like in 5th grade, like, everyone wanted to, dance like Usher and, walk around looking cool as him. And it's like, then you're like listening to the lyrics and you're just like, dude, I never even had my heart broken, at that point. But man, we were belting out those lyrics, or even Eminem or, any of those, 90s superstars. And yeah, I mean, like Creed, just, uh, you know, just like, I mean, I saw him with the Make America Great Again tour a few years back, and he, and it's amazing like how much time has gone by. But you're saying, it feels like deja vu when you go to their concerts, and you're like, dude, Scott Stapp still sounds like he did on 24 years ago, and you're like, how? Like it's amazing, and I hope that growing up, you and I, our age, were similar in age where we grew up with a show on VH1 called Bands Reunited where they took 80s and 90s bands. I mean, I would love to see that, like, even 20 years from now, if getting those MySpace bands back together. I mean, at one time I tried doing it, and I'd like, hey man, like you were saying, you had some beef with some older people, and you're like, hey man, do you still want to talk to this guy if I, do an interview, podcast, or maybe we, set up and just sit down on a couch, do like the big comfy couch or something, and sit down, another 90s throwback for you, and
Yep.
do it like a Bands Reunited. And some of them are just like, yeah, nah, not really my thing. I'm much happier working at AT&T. And you're just like, ah, and that's what's so disheartening is seeing people with talent and then they just throw it away. And you're like there's a couple singers that come to mind that when they were 17, 18, they could have been on top of the world. And they were. They got to tour around the world. They played places you and I couldn't even go to in South America. They played shows. They, phenomenal vocalists. And then now it's like, what do you do? Oh, I'm just a judge, or I'm a lawyer, or oh, I work at Starbucks. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, why? Why, man? I mean, earlier in the podcast, I said I did some stuff with American Idol, and I'll reach
Hmm.
out to some of those contestants and I'll be like, hey, man, remember you used to have like 1 million people tuning into you on Monday night to watch you on TV? What do you do now? And they're like, oh, I just like wash cars at the local car wash dealer or whatever. And you're like, are you at least singing when you're washing these cars? And they're like, no. I'm like, you probably make a lot of tips if you were, but I mean, it's hard, But I
It
mean, I
is.
guess the lesson tonight is, find something that you enjoy, not because other people enjoy it. Like, it is cool to be a band, it's cool to be into acting, it's cool to be in the entertainment realm, but, it's also cool to, be normal too and be a fan of musicians and filmmakers and whatnot. And, then, just do your best. And, it's all you can do.
That's true.
And
And
have fun doing it. Yeah, go ahead.
oh yeah, no, I agree with that 100%. Do something that you truly enjoy doing, but don't do it at the cost of burning yourself out. Don't do it at the cost of burning yourself out because a lot of people do that. They think this is what they want. They thoroughly love it, and then they get into some really hard things and it burns them. It burns them out.
Yeah.
So don't if you think you're going to get burnt out doing it or there's a possibility of being burnt out doing it, don't do it. Just, don't do it.
And take it
Um
from me. Been burnt out many times before.
been there.
Yeah.
All right. And with that, Vinny, I thank you so much, everyone. Vinny, thank you for tuning in with Music with Jake, and I hope you guys have a wonderful night.